Will you pray with me? Father, may our consideration of the biblical basis for giving strengthen your church and bring glory to your holy name. Amen. My name is Jim Vitello, and I'm one of your wardens and a member of the Stewardship Committee. The Stewardship Committee was provided with a new training manual last year, and the training started with 4 reflections on the biblical basis for giving. When discussing our plans for this year, a committee member suggested that we provide these reflections to the larger congregation. Our hope is that they will teach, challenge, and bless all of us as we seek to strengthen our spiritual home at St. David's. Reflection number 2, New Testament basis for giving. A reading from 1 Corinthians 9, 7-14. Who serves as a soldier at his own expense? Who plants a vineyard and does not eat its grapes? Who tends a flock and does not drink milk? Whoever plows and threshes should be able to do so in the hope of sharing in the harvest. If we have sown spiritual seed among you, is it too much if we reap a material harvest from you? Don't you know that those who serve in the temple get their food from the temple, and that those who serve at the altar share in what is offered on the altar? In the same way, the Lord has commanded that those who preach the gospel should receive their living from the gospel. In this passage, the Apostle Paul lays out the biblical basis for giving in the New Testament era. Once Jesus had risen from the dead and ascended into heaven, the disciples of Jesus were scattered throughout Judea, Samaria, and ultimately to the ends of the earth. The old paradigm of giving a tenth to the Lord for the work of the temple and the inheritance of the Levites was no longer appropriate. As the gospel spread across the ancient world, many Gentiles were converted and churches were formed. The New Testament is filled with examples of these new churches and instructions for worship and preserving sound doctrine. Preaching the gospel may be the highest calling in this life. Paul says in 1 Timothy 3:1, whoever aspires to be an overseer desires a noble task. And in 1 Timothy 5:17, the elders who direct the affairs of the church well are worthy of double honor, especially those whose work is preaching and teaching. Churches were to be formed with overseers and elders appointed to care for the people. Their primary task was to preach the word, encourage, admonish, and train the people in righteousness and godliness. How did Paul envision these many churches to function with overseers and elders? Clearly, he believed that much like the Old Testament paradigm with the Levites receiving the 10% tithe, the Lord commanded that those who preach the gospel should receive their living from the gospel. In other words, the church was to be funded by the generous offerings of the believers. So has the 10% tithe continued in the New Testament era? That isn't clear. But Paul says in 1 Timothy 6:17-19, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. In this way, they will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life. Generosity is commanded in the New Testament era. Whether generosity means 10% of your income or something more or less is a personal matter, but clearly generosity is commanded. I wonder how a consideration of the New Testament paradigm of generosity might influence our perspective on giving. What would St. David's look like if we all practiced generosity? How would generosity impact our church programs which seek to edify parishioners? How would generosity impact our church outreach as we seek to spread the love of God to the world around us. Our prayer is that a renewed perspective on generosity might usher in a new era of profound impact in both the church and the world around us. Amen.